comments I get is, Mike, you're so brave, I wish I could do the things you do, but I'm scared. And so the talk today is 5 concepts I've learned to help change your perspective of fear. Things I've learned the hard way. For myself, it all started with one big trip. So I'm Canadian. I did a marine biology degree in Canada. And I did biology because I loved all animals, except llamas. Llamas are off the list. So when I graduated, I was in a position that many students are. I didn't exactly know what I wanted to do, but I did kind of like biology. I was a bit lost, but at that same time, life came and dumped a whole crate of lemons on my head. Life gave me problems. I had a car crash. I totaled my car. I had a really bad breakup with my girlfriend, and one of my grandparents passed away. The first one. Hard thing for every family. And so I was feeling lost. And I remember walking through the halls of campus and just feeling listless and not really knowing where my spot was in the world. And I saw a poster on the wall. And the poster said, recent biology graduates, research assistant positions available in Indonesia. I'm Canadian, so Indonesia was the other side of the planet for me. But this side of the planet I was on, the North American side, wasn't treating me very nice. So I was excited to go potentially to Indonesia, away from all my problems. But I couldn't go alone. No way, that's too scary. Canada to Indonesia, it's literally the other side of the planet. That's crazy, traveling by yourself that far. So I found a friend, and together we saved money. We went door to door selling cookies, we fundraised, and eventually we had the money to go pay the deposit to lock in our spot, 100%, no backing out now, to go to the other side of the world. We had different schedules though, so I walked up to the counter to pay my thousands of dollar deposit. I did so with a wince, with my heart fluttering, and I locked myself in, confident my friend would follow suit shortly after. I go down to the bar, grab a beer, have a sip. I wait 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30, 40, 50 minutes, and I get a text. Bing! Pull up my phone. It starts with, bro, ... Oh no. You can probably guess where the story goes. I couldn't get the money together, won't be going after all. Frowny face. Sorry. Sorry? We just saved up thousands of dollars over months. I didn't even know where Indonesia was. Now I'm going by myself. What do they eat? What do they speak? I don't know anyone else is going. How could you do this to me? He threw me under the bus. And I remember the curtain of fear washed over my body, knowing that I was locked in. There was no way out now. When I got on that plane, I remember looking over my shoulder. My parents were in the window, and I thought, I'm never going to see them again. This is the final trip of my life. I got on the plane, I flew to the other side of the planet, and I had the best trip of my entire life. It was perfect. The food was great, the people were amazing, and I forgot about all my problems. The thing is, what I learned is, I had never been that scared in my life up to that point. And I don't think I've ever been that scared again. And that brings us to our first concept about changing our perspective on fear. And it's courage is a muscle. You have to keep using it, and the more you do, the easier it gets. Do you guys know pull-ups? You go to the gym, there's a bar, and you pull yourself up. Yeah, they're really hard if you try them for the first time. Really, really hard. And they can feel almost impossible the first time. And when you're fighting your fears for the first time too, doing that big presentation in front of a crowd or taking that trip to the other side of the planet, it can feel impossible as well. Like you could never do it. A lot of it's rooted in a question that echoes in your head, either consciously or subconsciously, and it's, what if I fail? I think as we cascade through this life, we become afraid of failure. And that makes us fearful. The thing about fear, though, is we have to stop putting success and failure on the result of the task and start putting it on the action when you're faced with fear. So, I think very commonly we'll have a presentation or something in our life that scares us, and we think about the result. But the reality is, if you're faced with fear, the importance is the action when you're faced with it. So, instead of saying, oh, I'm successful if it does well, it's I'm successful if I step into it, not away from it. So success is stepping into the feeling of fear, not reclining backwards when you're confronted with it. That's our second concept. So I told you we're going to have fun. And this next video is a lot of fun. This is Tultepec, just north of here. They have Toros de Fuego, part of the National Pyrotechnics Festival. Every year they drink way too much pulque and they jump around in the bowls of fire. It was an incredible event. So that was last year. I was filming it for my YouTube channel, Fearless and Far. And it was by far the craziest, coolest, and most beautiful festival I've ever been to in my entire life. And while I was filming it, there was a brief pause in the chaos, so I ran out of the explosions for a second, just to get an emotional break. And as I did so, a local from Tultepec saw me and he came over and he was quite curious to see a slightly crispy Canadian in Tultepec, which is not a spot where foreigners normally go. And so he came over and gave me a hug. And as we left the embrace, I saw he had burn marks all over his face and burn marks all over his arms. He wasn't wearing the same protection I was. And I said to him, I said, man, aren't you afraid to get so close to the bulls? And I'll never forget what he said to me next. He said, amigo, my friend, of course we're scared, but we do it anyway. Because it's our tradition. It's our tradition to dance in the fire. We follow the fear into the fire. That stuck with me for a long time. Especially the part where he said, we feel the fear, but we do it anyway. Because a very common misconception in this life is some people feel fear and some people don't. But the reality is everyone feels fear. People up on stage, like myself, professional skydivers, rock stars who put on a show at Madison Square Garden. Everybody feels fear. Just some people choose to do it anyway. The third concept is fearlessness is a choice. We can't choose fear. We all feel fear. But we can choose to be fearless. I have another quote for you. Fear is like a fire. If you can control it, it can cook for you. It can heat your house. If you can't control it, it will burn everything around you and destroy you. Fear is your friend or your worst enemy. Many times in my life, I would fall into this trap where I would be afraid to do something, and when I would confront fear, I would be afraid of being afraid. I would say, oh no, I'm so scared right now. And the fire would burn brighter, and I'd become even more afraid. It was a vicious cycle. Something that's quite curious, though, is we think about fear. It's very close to what it feels like to be excited. Our heart races, our cortisol surges, the body prepares for action. But with fear, we visualize a negative outcome. And with excitement, we visualize a positive outcome. Biochemically, they're pretty much exactly the same thing. There's an idea that's called anxious reappraisal. And that idea is if you can change your language around fear, you can change your relationship with fear too. So, instead of saying, oh, I'm so scared for the presentation tomorrow, you can say, oh, yes, I'm so excited for the presentation tomorrow. And you lie to yourself, you do, but if you lie to yourself for long enough, you start to trick your mind, because the two are very similar feelings. And once you start confusing fear and excitement, then your toxic relationship with the feeling ends, and your love story with it can begin. I have another movie for you. This one's even maybe a little bit crazier. It's the beautiful little town of Ivrea in Italy. It's quiet, except for one time a year, they throw oranges at each other for 3 days. The locals told me though, don't worry, it didn't hurt too much. So it turns out oranges really do hurt when you get a headshot like that. And the reason why they told me that, don't worry, it doesn't hurt that much, is because it was uncommonly warm that year in Ivrea. It happens in the spring. So normally when they start throwing oranges, at about 9 a.m., the oranges are frozen. So you're throwing frozen oranges at each other for fun. Doesn't sound like fun to me. Well, that was kind of fun, but had a black eye after that for a bit. So my personal experience was that, yeah, oranges definitely do hurt. And we learn a lot from personal experiences, don't we? We do an action, there's a reaction, and we learn, we adapt. You get hit in the face with an orange, and you take a break from orange juice for a little bit. The thing is, though, our life right now, it's hard to have a truly personal experience. And this is because with social media and television and information being so widely available all of the time, our personal experience becomes a shared experience. And we can learn things vicariously through other people. An example in my life is when I told my friends and family I was coming to Mexico City, they said, you can't come to Mexico City. Have you seen the news? Have you heard the stories? Do you know what they're doing down there? And I admit, when I first came here, I was a little bit afraid. Not because I had personal experience or my family and friends had personal experience, because everyone was just saying this is what you should feel. But I got here and I fell in love with this magical city. The food, the history, the people, it's one of the most underrated cities in the entire planet. And it made me realize something as well. We can catch fears like we catch the flu from social exposure. We might not have a personal experience with it, nor do people around us, but they'll still infect us with the fear. Here we have our 5 concepts today of changing perspective on fear. Number 1, courage is a muscle. We have to keep using it for it to get stronger. Number 2, success is stepping forward in regards to fear. Failure is only when you step back away from it. Number 3, fearlessness is a choice. You have to choose to be fearless. Number 4, fear is excitement with the wrong framing. We can change our language around fear and change our relationship with it. The last one, we catch fears like we catch the flu from social exposure. My favorite, though, by far, is number 3. Fearlessness is a choice. I say this because this is the one that changed my life the most. Understanding that at every moment in your life, you do have a choice. When you feel that feeling, to go to that job interview, to ask that boy or girl on a date, to give the presentation. You can step forward or you can step back. Everyone feels fear. This is your choice what to do in that moment. So, the next time you feel that feeling, your heart starts racing. You know the feeling. Your palms get sweaty. Remind yourself you're not necessarily scared. You're excited. And the best version of you is on the other side of that feeling. And the only difference between you and the greatest version of you ever is what you decide to do in every moment of fear. Do you step back and retreat? Or do you step forward and embrace the feeling? So acknowledge the fear. Let it flow in you and through you. In its wake, there will only be a better you. Gracias. I've made a small little worksheet for you if you go to fearlessandfar.com/fear. It's free. If you found the talk interesting, I'd love to see you there. Thanks, guys.